This afternoon, we are hoping to share some learnings as we prepare for the next round of rankings, publications for the Sub-Saharan Africa University rankings. As we all know, the very first Sub-Saharan University rankings was released in June earlier this year. It's the very first for the continent. 88 institutions submitted and were represented in this first rankings that was released. 121 institutions submitted applications, even though not all were ranked. The rankings focus on the 5 key pillars that were really driven by insights from what the continent of Africa needs, indicators that were captured from deep research with stakeholders in higher education, as well as stakeholders on the continent of Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa in particular. And so it's a very important tool and resource for higher education in Africa. And we are really looking forward to engaging deeply as universities on the continent. And so as Education Collaborative, since our mandate really is to work with institutions on the continent to improve on the general outcomes of higher education as is presented in the students that will graduate, we are taking this opportunity towards preparing for the next set of rankings publications to share learnings from institutions that have participated before in the first round, also that have participated in other rankings and metrics related to higher education, and then also institutions that are getting ready to to take part in this new publications that will be done. And so let me introduce myself. My name is Rose Dodd. I am the Executive Director for Education Collaborative, and I'm currently at Ashesi University campus. Really good to be here. And next, I would ask my 2 panelists to also introduce themselves. I will hand over to you, Professor Adebayo, and after that, Dr. Bamkole can also introduce himself. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Rose. My name is Abiodun Adebayo. I'm the Vice-Chancellor of Covenant University, and it's my pleasure to be on this webinar today to share some light on the Sub-Saharan African University rankings, and I'm sure we'll be able to do justice to some of the issues that may arise. Thank you so much for having me, Rose.
Okay, thank you very much, Rose and Professor Adebayo, for having me this afternoon. My name is Peter Bamkole, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Pan-Atlantic University. So we are getting ready to launch into this. So you will be hearing a different perspective from somebody that is preparing instead of somebody that has already joined the ranking. I look forward to learning as well as sharing our own. So thank you once again for having me this afternoon.
Thank you very much, Prof. and Dr. Bamkole. All right, so as shared earlier, we are really going to have a conversation, sharing experiences, learnings, and then just discussing briefly what this, rankings really means to us as educators on the continent. I think we will take about an hour, and then if there is a bit of time, we can also take some questions from the chat room as well. Okay, so welcome once again, everyone, and it's really good to have you here. I think I will start with Professor Adebayo. If you could just share, why, in your opinion, should we be interested in the Sub-Saharan African University rankings? And maybe I should add that from your experience and engagement in higher education on the continent, why would you say this is such a critical practice, for lack of a better word, for us to engage in these rankings?
Thank you so much, Rose. Why should we be interested in the ranking? Whether we like it or not, the ranking has come to stay. As a matter of fact, we are all ranked in some other spheres of life, not just universities. Now, in the family, we are ranked. And that's why you have the father as the head of the home. That's ranking in some measures. And is it within the political space now? In governance, we also rank. There are hierarchy. You have the head of an organization, and you also have other team leaders, then you now have the followers and other members of staff. So we should be ranked. We should all be interested in the ranking because of the following reasons. Ranking helps in branding a university, for example, or an institution, for instance. And it also gives a kind of visibility, global visibility to persons, to the institutions and to the faculty and staff within those institutions. And what do I mean? We know the world has become a global village these days, and the ranking bodies we are talking about already have the wherewithal, they have the space, they have what it takes to be, they are known globally. And so by attaching yourself to that, I'm sure it will give visibility to your university, because university must be known. It should not just be hidden in one corner here in Nigeria, or maybe in Ghana or in Cotonou or in Togo, and yet we are not known. People need to know. And it will also become a very stable source for decision makers. We all apply for grants, even as students, as maybe postgraduate students, as even the researchers in the university or wherever. And so what they want, the people who will give you this grant, we need to assess your university. And the first point of call will be, these ranking bodies, whether the Times Higher Education or the QS ranking or whatever model, they will look at those ranking bodies to see how visible is your institution. Can we be trusted? What measure of branding do they really have? Have they managed something like this before? And it will also be a source for maybe collaboration and partnership, because any institution that want to partner with your institution will also want to check and how is the rating of this university? Are they ranked? And if they are ranked, so what are they? What measures do they have? What do they have to bring on the table for me? Because no one or no institution will want to just to be the only source bringing in maybe funding or whatever, and the other institution is also not ready to to partake. So I believe ranking holds a very good platform for global visibility, and again, recruitment of our graduates, recruitment of will-be students. They go to these ranking sites to check, how is this institution I'm coming into? What is their placement? What about their teaching? What about their research content? What about their community service? Will I be able to benefit maximally from this? Aside that, it also, put us on we are able to also benchmark and also provide data, which is a critical component that is missing in Africa. Now, you will understand that data is an issue in Africa here. We lack data. We do not know how to keep data. And that's why it appears we are not even visible at all in the first instance. And so by ranking, it helps us to gather data for us to know where we are. For instance, if we know where we are now, we can now improve on some of the things that we need to do. And we can also compare what best practices, or we can begin to have global best practices. What is that institution doing that I'm not doing? So you begin to check yourself and see how you can equally gain some level of, some level of upgrade in your facility. And I think it holds quite a lot of things, a potential for us. So that's why we are more interested in ranking. And lastly, it also helps us in reputation. The reputation of our institutions, it's critical. And this ranking would also help us to gain global reputation, because no one will also want to be known as a local university. Everyone wants to strive for global relevance. And I believe one key way to do this is getting into this ranking, which will build our branding, will build our reputation as university. And that's why at Covenant here, we participate in ranking.
Yeah, thank you so much, Prof. Adebayo. So I was, Dr. Banky, you know, as Prof was speaking, I was just noting in here, right? And one of the things that came to mind is something Professor Angela from Ashesi University mentioned in a speech she gave one time on how, you know, it's really difficult, or you can't really improve on something you don't measure. If you think about it, you know, how do you even know you're making an improvement if you're not measuring the progress, right? And so in a sense, to what Prof. Adebayo just said about rankings being a way to collect data, see how well we are doing in some of the areas that institutions are really, you know, excelling in. I'm going to ask you, you know, in light of why we should consider these rankings, to maybe share your thoughts on, or reflections on, you know, it's called a ranking because it is a ranking, right? There's number 1 and there's number 10 and then there's number 20. However, there's a different approach that we are trying to use, you know, with particular Sub-Saharan Africa rankings, right? We're trying to figure out a way to use it to foster collaboration and for general improvement of the ecosystem. So could you kindly share maybe your own reflections on why it's important in that light?
Okay, thank you so much, Rose, and thank you very much, Professor Adebayo. I think he has basically cleared all the thoughts on ground. I could just easily say I concur. However, let me share the perspective from, you know, our university as we try to join the ranking. First of all, if you look at the way the ranking has been structured, there are 5 pillars. And if you take each of those pillars, you will see that getting involved in the ranking helps you to deep dive and to make sure that you are not just ticking the boxes, but you are making improvement in each of those pillars. Let me start with the last one, which is the Africa impact. Ordinarily, most of us either want to publish, do relationship with institutions outside the continent. But this SSA ranking basically put the searchlight on us collaborating and working together as African institutions. That for me is something wonderful and very specific to our continent. And the minute we start to focus on that, it means that we are going to be looking at issues that are relevant to Africa, by Africa, for Africa. This is something that in the world ranking and all of that, they do not pay this kind of attention to. So that's one benefit for us. Secondly, for me, I think it helps us to focus. Most of us are doing very well in many things, but unfortunately, there is no systematic way of measuring it that is, you know, common across borders. So in real sense of it, yes, it's ranking, yes, you have to compare with others, but that for me should not be the driving, you know, force. In as much as we are benchmarking, we are actually benchmarking against the best practices rather than with institutions. I think this is the point that I must stress. When we go into ranking, people want to come first, second, and third, but that's not the issue. Not to benchmark against institutions, but to benchmark against best practices. So we learn from each other. Then we collaborate. So institution A may be better at doing something, and then we collaborate so that we can upskill ourselves. Now imagine that all of us aspire and we handhold each other towards best practices across the continent, then we become very visible to the world. And then it means that people too that have interest in Africa can begin to say, where can I go? Which institution can I, to be able to do X, Y, Z? There are so many institutions today that don't understand what is going on in Africa. And they want to, but they're not going to do it with anybody. They are going to do it with the best that can deliver for them. So what do we have to offer? For me, this issue of visibility is very important. However, it's not visibility for the sake of visibility. What this visibility does for us is that it helps us to be transparent about many things. So in data, you have to have evidence. And so once you have evidence and you put it out there, people trust that what you have put there is correct. And so that also gives some level of comfort to whoever you are working with, whether they are within the continent or outside the continent. But the last one that I would like to share is the one on data, which you talked about. Now, one thing that I have noticed in my relationship around this is that in Africa, we do a lot, but we do not capture. So we are under capturing records or data. And when we do have those records, sometimes we are underreporting those data. And what this does for us is to focus us very clearly on what matters and make sure that where we are not capturing well, we begin to put a system around capturing it, even as the students are entering our institutions, and making sure that we are reporting it accordingly. That way, we will increase our voice within SSA first, and then ultimately, even within the global ranking system. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Banki. I see that, so in the chat box, some of the participants are really agreeing with what we are saying. Aravinda from Boto University mentioned that rankings help institutions take stock of their impact, and also to pause and reflect, as the metrics required for rankings need us to collect information with evidence, like you mentioned, Dr. Banki, so that it helps us to also see if we are on the right track. So we are all in agreement with this, that it is definitely important for us to, consider joining these rankings. So I think I'll come back to you, Prof. Adebayo. You participated in the first one, right? The very pilot rankings for Sub-Saharan Africa, the rankings, you participated in the first one. So I guess you sort of answered this first question, which was, why did you participate in the first one? But in addition to that, what would you say is one strategy, right, that you've realized to be, one or two strategies that you've realized to be very useful in preparing to submit for, the rankings, whether it may be in the first one, Sub-Saharan African ranking specifically, and perhaps maybe in the other ones that you've participated in?
Yeah, thank you so much, Rose. And again, we are glad to always participate in rankings like this, as earlier enumerated. At the Sub-Saharan rankings, which was the very first one, the pilot one indeed, that we participated in, our experience over the years in the ranking system or in the ranking business had really helped us over the years. And because we featured on the World University Rankings of the Times Higher Education, we qualify, I think for the past 5, 6, 7 years now, we have been very consistent in that ranking. We also participated in the impact ranking of the Times Higher Education. And we have, in fact, right from the inaugural session, we have been we have been there. We have been very consistent with that. So our experience had really helped us in gathering data. So you see, one thing I want to share here is early data collection. We need to be sure that we gather our data early. And what do I mean? You don't wait until they open up the call for data gathering before we start making a submission or before we start gathering data for submission. It is very important that this is noted. And sometimes what this had really helped us as a university is that we try to appraise ourselves on our performance. What have we not done well in the previous round? Now, what can we then do again that we will improve our ranking? What policies do we need to bring on board that will aid and assist us, that will equally help us? What kind of best practices can we also improve on our processes as a university that will help us? I think that has really helped us a lot. And so I experienced in the Sub-Saharan ranking, the pilot one had shown that the only thing that we have not done, that we have not been able to do, that this ranking brought to fore, is the student engagement. The student engagement for us is a very welcoming one, because these are the products. This will be the products of the institution in the nearest future after they graduate. And it means that somebody is now appraising what you are doing right now, even before they graduate. I think that is a plus for us, because they can tell them, give them first-hand information about what you need to do, things that are not right. They will tell you the way it is, because it is anonymous, and we don't get the feedback. We only saw that at the end we only find that the result has been released. So we submit the data of students that need to engage, but we don't get that. So, for instance, there are 4 or 5 pillars here under which student engagement will occur. University elected representation. So do you just select people to lead them? So they will tell them the truth. So then the student unionism also, and the teaching engagement. Are you teaching them well? So as an institution, what we can now do, in case you have not been doing that, is to see that there is a feedback mechanism. That is, for every module that has been taught, you don't have to wait until the classes are taught before you begin to get appraisal of your lecturers. Because if they don't teach well, which means they will report you to TH. And that's the meaning. And so interaction with peers and faculty is also a critical element. I think all of these are the fallouts from the engagement with the Sub-Saharan ranking. My very good friend, Dr. Bamkole, earlier mentioned about African impact. You know, our institution is Afrocentric. We believe so much in developing local content. And that, if you look at our vision, it's raising a new generation of leaders that will help, repair the battered image of Africa. And that is our vision, and we are driving it so passionately. So seeing that, you just have to collaborate with African researchers, that's the only way to go. We need to tell them that this is homegrown issues. We need to begin to provide homegrown solutions to our local problems that will become global in the nearest future. I think, for me, this is a key one here. So how do we begin to interconnect as Africans? How do we need to reverse the brain drain? A lot of talents are moving away from Africa here. So it all stems from here. Let's see how we can connect as Africans. Let's see how we can interact as Africans. I think this African impact is a very key one, that if we can harness and maximize between, African to African institution, I believe it will help build a new Africa, the kind of Africa we truly want to see. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Adebayo. And those are really, really strong points. Thank you so much for sharing those two strategies. So one, early data collection, and Times Higher Education actually posts the methodology for the rankings, right? So you can see that on the website. I just put it in the chat box. And when you go there, you get a very deep insight into, the different descriptions of the different metrics. What are they really considering? What are they thinking around? Of course, you may not know the exact data they're looking for, but at least you can begin thinking about it, around it, looking at what you're doing internally in your own institutions and the systems you have in place. Dr. Banki, so, of course, several of us have not, by us, I mean institutions around the continent, have not participated in rankings before, maybe not even just the Sub-Saharan Africa, but potentially, not really any form of rankings, sometimes because of the level, the type of data that's being requested or required, and how our institutions may not meet it, or we just have not been able to make the cut in the past. And I think until a few months ago, Pan Atlantic University was also here, right? So my question, I guess, following what Prof just shared, is in thinking about preparing for Sub-Saharan Africa University rankings, what is Pan Atlantic University? What are you putting in place? How are you thinking of approaching this? If you could share a few points on that.
Okay, thanks a lot, Rose. First of all, depending on institutions, we all have different way in which we perceive ranking in any form. Some we may not even qualify in quote if we are young institution. So for instance, in the world ranking, if you don't have, I think 1,000 journal articles over a 5-year period, you cannot even, be part of that. But the SSA ranking says 200. So technically, most of us are able to join in that. That's the first one. Secondly, I think it is very good that this methodology which you have posted, everybody have access to it. And they have been doing a number of seminars to inform all of us. However, there are many things we need to think about, which we have just crossed the first path. We submitted for the impact ranking a few days ago. And I can tell you, it helped to focus all of us in a particular direction. And each university will basically have to have their own strategy around it. But I'll share what we did. The first is that we identified champions within the university. So these are basically people that are used to gathering data and providing data to NUC, that is like the regulator. And they are the director of academic planning. And so they are used to that. And luckily, they are also interested in making this happen. So that makes it easier for us. But beyond that, at the leadership level, we were very committed. Now, this is very important. And I think in the conversation we had yesterday, Professor Adebayo shared this particular insight, where for you to really make a big difference, the leadership that has the helicopter view must be fully entrenched in data gathering and making sure that every data submitted is correct and it is adequate. Now, the format of gathering data is also very important. Otherwise, you will have data, and when it is time to submit, you are then regathering or repurposing data. That is not good. You should understand how data should be gathered in the right format and then take it at the right time. Now, beyond that, I think what is important is also to have everybody understand or to see the big picture. So through our University Management Council, we share this big vision with everybody. And then all the deans are able to key into this. And so when we ask for specific data, they understand why we are asking for the data. And I must say that this impact ranking that we put in for, it's just a start. And we know that we have learned a lot already in trying to submit for this. But more importantly, it's like a forerunner for us for the SSA ranking. If you don't start, you will never start. You know, the philosophy for most people is like, let me get myself ready. So before I can start, I don't want to start anyhow. But you know what? There is no way you can be 100% ready. Everything that you will do, but it's just like the experiential learning they talk about in one of the pillars. The reality is that if you don't do it, if you don't experience it, you don't even know what it is all about. And so my attitude is, let's get started. Let's understand that there are some things that we may not meet. And I share with Professor Adebayo, there are some things that maybe we as African institutions, we're not considering very well. For instance, the issue of mental health counseling. I know it is well established in most institutions in the West. In the continent of Africa, we understand it, we are practicing it somehow, but we have not taken it to the same level that is being taken to. In fact, up until a couple of years ago, it used to be a taboo. You cannot say you have mental health issues. Immediately, we will start asking questions that, have you offended people from your village and things like that, you know? So it's only now that we know that, look, when somebody is learning online, there are issues that are around that. If people have just left home for the first time and they're experiencing bullying or something, there are many things, you know, people that have never experienced freedom the way we are giving it to them at the university. There are many issues that can crop up. And so as institutions, we must be ready to support them. And what this is just doing is checking us and making sure that we have that capacity to be able to help the students. So indeed, it's something that is exciting. It's something that we must all embrace. And as Education Collaborative, at least for the West African Hub, which I chair, and which Professor Adebayo is also, this is one area of focus for us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Banki. Thank you so much for sharing that. So identify champions, and it helps if they have you can start from the low-hanging fruit. So people or persons with experience submitting or gathering data to regulators, right? As higher education institutions, these persons do exist already. So identifying them as champions, and then bringing everyone on board. So letting the leadership of the university and of departments understand why we are doing this, seeing the big picture, so that when we go to them for data, we already know why we are approaching it this way. Prof. Adebayo, I don't know if you wanted to add maybe a little bit around how did you set up your teams to, or usually how do you set up your team to submit for rankings? Maybe using the example of SSA. Is this a specific unit, or are they ad hoc teams, or maybe is it with champions like Pan-Atlantic University does?
Yeah, thank you so much. Our team here, we have, right from inception, we had a team. We call it data analytic team. It's not just specific, since we are into different rankings. And so they are data, they build on our data, they work on those data. So it's a team, so we call them so, but for the impact ranking of Times Higher Education, what we have, because there are 17 SDGs, we call it identifying a champion there. And how did we come up selecting this champion? Well, as head of the institution, what I did is to look at the strength of the individuals coming to head this. How prolific they are, what interests them, what's their area of research competence, what do they do? Are they also involved in community engagement? So all of these, because that's what the impact ranking just does. It talks about, apart from research, it also talks about engagement. And so that forms the kind of person I usually appoint to head this to head this team. Apart from the analytic team now coordinates the activities of this champion. And of course, the analytic team, maybe a group, about 7 of them, with a head who coordinates all their activity. So usually they look at that thing. For instance, if you talk about climate change, I know, my faculty who are doing exceptionally well, very well. Apart from public, you see them organize quite a lot of, researches here and there, quite a lot of engagement here and there. They have partners because everything comes to the Vice-Chancellor, so he notes those things. And he's not just approving those things, those programs to be held. He is approving it because he's also looking at a lot of other activities that he can do in the later. So this is what we do as an institution. And again, I must say here that we must begin to look at, as head of institution, the buck lies with us here. That you must just have to be involved because you are the one to dictate it. Yes, you have assigned someone to head the team. You don't just totally rely on whatever the team lead would give to you, but you just have to create a time to go through this data that has been submitted. Because occasionally, in most cases, usually, I go through all of these, and I tend to find out a lot of things that have not been added. And I have the information. I just apply. I say, no, this one, I approve this. This one, I also keep my own data in case anything is missing, so I can equally send that to them. And what I also do here is to, for instance, we encourage our faculty members to maybe look at grants and support grants, because that is also required. That will bring, apart from bringing income to the university, it also helps the individual to be more independent in terms of his research and also count towards the ranking. And so I promote that a lot. I have, I bring them out, let them know the essence of this grant. It's going to first of all help you. No, if Vice-Chancellor would not, you don't need to apply. You only apply. He is the one overseeing it anyway. But it's your money. So we just have to spend it according to the dictate of the book. But the university may not have to set a lot of policy for you to spend maybe 1 pen out of that money. But it's already drawn by the grantor. So, you see, we encourage them and all of that. By doing that, a lot of them are now striving to get grant. And we've got quite a lot of huge grants here, huge grant by NIH, by the World Bank, and what have you, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So we have quite a lot of grants that we are running. So in computing because that's also talking about financial stability, and which is also gathering a lot of money here. If you look at it here, the scores here is very high. Resources and finances, that's it totals about 20 here, 20 points. And so, and they also check these resources against the student ratio, against the finance per student, funding sources. All of these built towards the ranking. So the man sitting at the helm of affair must understand the rudiments of this ranking and must be sure that he works towards it. One good thing that this ranking does is to help us prepare grounds under which we can improve the institution. So it helps in improving the institutional base, the facilities. Because, for instance, I think like I shared yesterday, we usually have accreditors come to accredit our programs. If those accreditors are not there, we may not be able to, truth be told, some of us, facilities will so decay that we may not be able to repair them. But when they tell you that your accreditors are coming, whether in Ghana, in Mali, to visit your institution, wow, you just have to get yourself prepared. You have the methodology just like this, and ensure that you work towards that. If your lecturers that have been writing to you that they need this, and they are also going to talk to them, and so you just have to provide it for them. So also, by doing so, it helps to improve on the facilities, on the institutional base and the well-being of so we cannot overemphasize what this ranking can really do for us as an institution. And so these are the few things I'm going to share under these questions.
Thank you, Prof. Thanks so much. Yeah, so we have here we have participants joining from Botswana, Nigeria, Kenya, Ghana. I see Ivory Coast. I see Uganda. I see Burkina Faso. I hope I haven't missed your country. It's really good to have everyone here. I see a question / comment, in the chat box about validation, right? So how do, for instance, Science Higher Education rankings validate the data provided, right? If you're thinking about maybe Prof. Adebayo, when submitting data in response to certain questions, right? How is Science Higher Education validating it? And that's on the website, and I can share a link briefly. But then also, how does the evidence look like? The evidence you need to submit backing the data you provide.
All right.
Also look like.
Thank you so much, Rose. Well, validating data, you may not get 100% validation in some cases, but there must be an element of, trust in terms of whatever data that will be validated. At least you must get a threshold that you can say that if you meet up with this threshold, you can be sure that the data, that the method they are using is also very good. So how does THE do it? One, for the impact ranking, it must be in the public domain. It must be in the public domain. And of course, when you are pushing any data into the public domain, you are held accountable for it. And so if you lie, definitely, it may not be immediately, but somehow, you are putting your institution at a very great risk. That's one key method of this. Then if you submit a data, does it really address, is it specific? Does it really address the questions that they are asking for? That's how they mark. I think they have 3 points for each question, that they ask. One, have you addressed the question? And how specific is the question? And is the data also in the public domain? And once that is done, then you have your full score. But usually, because you cannot, if for instance, they are asking you, do you have, any policy on, sexual misconduct or whatever misconduct in this? And if you don't have it, you don't have it. Whatever data they will check. So that's one way of validating their data. Now, they also ask you what kind of engagement have you as your institution done in so and so, and they will see it. You have to see, and it has to be within a time frame, and it must be accessible to all. And if you have not done any form of engagement, for instance, what kind of training have you conducted? Do you have evidence to show? Do you have video evidence? Do you have pictorial evidence? Do they have, you can't just gather people and say you are snapping. Now, on each of those, you see, sir, I spend nights upon nights reviewing those submissions before I approve, because I'm the final. The team does that, then I check and I check that. If you don't have it, you don't have it. There are sometimes they want useless data. I say you better remove this thing. This thing is not good. You just have to be on top of this game. So that's one way they validate data. Then the second way, I was telling the new person that I just appointed, I said, just be ready. THE will call you. He said, I said, they will call you. Data that they are not sure of, they will call. Now they also, for instance, if you claim you are a graduating student in agriculture because you want to have a high score, control zero hunger, control food insecurity, and all of that, they will ask you, now, okay, we have just gone through your website and we have not seen any graduate graduate in the BSc Agric or whatever. So how did you get it?
Yeah.
Okay, then they ask you to review your data or give us evidence. Now let's see the number of students that you have graduated. Let's see your convocation list, which ordinarily should be in the public domain. So they have ways and ways of validating this data. You may not get it at 100% sure. Now, I tell you, on World University Ranking, what THE has done is to, they have 5 pillars, the 5 pillars that they were using until the latest ranking, where it talks about internationalization, it talks about research, it talks about teaching, it talks about, citation and all of that, then the industry, research income and industry income. Now, that's the one they were in until recently, where they have just added 2 more and all of that. Now, they will check, THE will find out, since it's a build-up, they have the ones that they get from, they call it bibliometric gathering of data.
Right.
From Scopus, Elsevier. For instance, publication. They don't need you to, they don't have to submit anything there. It's, for instance, this Africa Impact we are talking about, you may not have to even do anything. You don't submit data on Africa Impact. All they just do is to go to Elsevier database and get and mine and scrub their data from there. And that's how they're going to get, for instance, how many African collaborators. If you look at that metric, if you have cyber, you will see it there. How many researchers are collaborating with Africa? How many persons are citing? How many Africans are citing your publications? Is it only Europeans that are citing your publication? You won't get any score there. So we must be intentional about what we do to promote the African agenda here. And so that's one alone is good enough. Now, another way that what they also do in that the World University Ranking is to also send what they call, reputation data for research, reputation for teaching. They gather this data. What they do is to send a survey form, just the same way they do to students. They send it to, researchers, and they have their method of selecting their research. If you have not published in high impact journal, in the databases that are known, particularly the Scopus database, in the last 2-3 years, or if you must have some minimum of publications there before they give to you. They give you to rate the institutions, rate this institution, which institution is best in research, which one is best in medicine, which one is best in that. So that's what they do. And those ones alone take more of the scores. As at the last, for instance, research alone has about 12 or 18%. So research and teaching reputation carries 30% of the total 100%. So how many is now remaining then, apart from the publication and all of that? So the data you are submitting may not be up to just 10% of the total. So what are we talking about now?
Yes.
So sorry, because I have quite a lot of information on this. And
thank you. No, it's really, really good point that you mentioned.
On student engagement alone, they are the one that will send those details to those students.
Exactly. So I was just going to mention. Yes, that students. So the big part is Sub-Saharan African rankings, which is not present in most other rankings, is this section where there's a survey directly to students, right? And it's very, very important and very, very critical. And that's not something you can, the students will just tell what it is, right? If you don't have a policy around sexual misconduct, it's clear.
Is that beyond students telling what it is, students can also choose to keep quiet. And if you do not have up to a particular threshold, then you don't get ranked. That in itself already says something. Imagine you having a student population of 5,000 and you do not have 50 students saying something about you. That's a lot of saying, and that marks you out. But the aspect that I wanted to chip in concerning evidence is that there are quite a lot of evidence in the public domain which you cannot quickly recreate. They are time-stamped. And so we have to be intentional about what we do. For instance, at the beginning of the year, when I took over this responsibility, I actually called our communications team. And everything that has to do one form or the other about saying what we do and how we're doing it, we are building it and putting it in the public domain. So when we do maybe a program like a community service, like Elevate Them, that talks about people within the community and what we're doing, we capture them very well and we put it on our LinkedIn page. We take pictures, videos, we tag, we do many things. So even if you just search, you will see those things. And so it is very important for us as institutions not to say we are on our own, we are doing great stuff, but we must have what I call the digital footprints, because these are ways they are going to look at your website, they are going to look at your handles, they're going to look at all of those things, and you will see the timestamp of those things there. So that is not a lie at all. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. I see there's one question, and well, it's sort of a comment, question. And then there's two of them. From David in Uganda from Cavendish University. So the first one is, it said that one of the unique objectives of the Sub-Saharan African rankings is to measure the alignment of institutions to their missions, right? Effectively providing a framework that is sort of self-assessment, right? A mirror rather than competition, which we touched on earlier. And he's asking that if we could please comment on how we see this reflected in the 5 pillars, right? This notion of not competition, but more a mirror or a self-assessment, and then also not competition, so more collaboration or competition, and a mirror self-assessment. And he also, I think something that we discussed a bit earlier around leadership oversight of the teams that do the data collection, or supervision. How can we continue to improve the supervision of the teams that do the data collection for the rankings? Maybe Banky, you can start with the competition collaboration and also the mirroring and self-assessment, and then Prof. Adebayo, you can come in with the oversight and supervision, which you mentioned a bit earlier. Let's see, I'm just doing a quick time check, so maybe we'll take 2 minutes each of this one.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let me start with the issue of mirroring self-assessment. When I looked at the ranking, there are some things that we are doing. Let me look at the one of access and fairness, for instance, the issue of disability support services. This is something that we are partially ready for, but we are not fully ready. So what do I mean by that? In terms of infrastructure, access, we have ramps, we have these are set up, we have lifts that people can go in. So if you are on wheelchair, you probably will be able to enter some of the classrooms, maybe not all. But what this does is to intentionally help us to think about it and to say, let us be fully ready. Also, the way in which we are teaching, we should just say, maybe today, if we have a blind person coming to our institution, will that person be able to have full, engagement? Perhaps, maybe not. But what this does for us is that we can begin to think about it and we can begin to plan and make things happen towards that. And that's why I love some of those, pillars and sub-pillars. In the areas of Africa for Africa, that helps in terms of collaboration. In fact, as I checked the attendees list, I could actually recognize some people from East Africa and this and that. And for me, that is the base upon which friendships are developed, but more importantly, collaboration. Since the last time we had the June convening, for instance, one of my team members have been to Rwanda to see the Vice-Chancellor of Rwanda University. And they've done a few things, hosted them, and 2 of them joined. That will never have happened. Maybe it can even happen in West Africa, but moving from West to East, without education collaborative, perhaps this would never have happened. And when you layer that on top of the SSA ranking, then I would say forces, but it encourages people to have that kind of collaboration. So we're not really competing from that point of view. We're working together towards a common purpose. And for me, finally, I think what is important is that, yes, you can't run away from being, at the end of the day, benchmark, classify, whatever name you want to call it. But ultimately, it helps this institution to aspire to where they want to be. And I will take teaching skills as an example. Last week, we had a retreat not just as University Management Council, but we brought a few other people in to think about how well we are doing in the areas of experiential learning, practical courses, and things like that. Now, this is not even looking at the ranking, but this is from what our students are saying to us. And so this ranking is mirroring that. And we are preparing ourselves to be able to get these students engaged in such a way that learning, project-based learning, objective learning, all those things are making them to be very excited when it comes to learning. So hopefully we will be able to deliver what we promise to them. And finally, the issue of career. Now, before, it used to be that when you finish, that's when your career starts. But today, that's not the way we look at it. Your career actually starts when you enter the university. And that way, we are also able to prepare you, whether it is when you are going for your internship, you have to be prepared very well, or whether you are, the way you even use social media. So we have professionals teach you how to, every single thing that is important, you put it on your LinkedIn page. And so you go for internship, certain things happen, you put it there. You are in the student club's leadership, you put it there. Employers are beginning to look at those things, and we are helping them to say, define yourself very well. And we are happy that a few of our students that went for the third year internship already secured a job 1 year ahead of graduation. That for us is what makes us happy. And so we begin to do that. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Banki. And the issue, the point on a self-assessment or a mirror, as we had discussed earlier, the metrics or the indicators for these rankings, at least this first set, really there was a lot of research, a lot of focus groups of students, faculty, institutional leaders, regulators, other stakeholders, parents in the sector, right? That were the data was collected from to come up with these first set of indicators. Of course, there's going to be a continuous, should I say, update, on these as we learn over the years, right? By THE. Prof. Adebayo, if you don't mind touching briefly on the supervision of the teams that collect the data. I think you spoke about it a bit earlier. I could just add a bit more to that now. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Like I mentioned earlier on, the whole essence of this ranking lies on the shoulder of the leaders of the university. Yeah, no matter what, because if the institution comes out better off, it is the leader. And of course, it trickles down. If it's also not doing very well, it's the leader. The leader has, and as such, you just have to take the responsibility and ensure that things are done right. So what I do, I use myself as a case study because in most cases, I ensure that he is the leader is the one who submits the data because it's expected to go through all the entries before submitting. And so the leader must provide effective oversight, whether in data gathering, setting the right policies, approving the right initiatives and projects that will be tailored towards the improving, first of all, the institution. And then, of course, if the data are now required for submission. So you must also be intentional about this. For instance, if you know that a particular thing, a particular, metric is you are not doing very well, what you need to do now is to begin to set out the right policies in place. And what this has also done for us is that there are some policies we are not even looking at. For instance, do you have policy on clean energy in your on your campus? Do you have policy on maybe smoking and all of that engagement on your campus? And so all these things lies on the shoulders of the leader, because you will be expected to make this submission, particularly in the impact ranking. So you must be strategic in the approvals you gave, in data collection. And data collection, like I mentioned, has to be early enough and get the leader must get the right set of people that can manage this. You don't just put somebody there just because he's your friend, or because you want to pay back maybe for the good he has done to you. No, you will fail. That's the beginning of the failure. So you put the right persons there to be able to do this. For instance, people who don't have the initiative, who are not driven. The champions we appoint here are persons who have the skills, like I mentioned earlier on, and like persons who have the initiative, who are already into a lot of these things that the the rankers actually demand from the institution. So these are the set of people you put there, because that's where it begins from. Then you have to also be very careful. Yes, someone may be doing this, but he doesn't have the time. He's not even thinking about it. So otherwise, he may become a clog in the way of your progress. And again, as leader, I think we need to spend time to understudy this ranking. On how will this ranking translate in improving my institution? That should be the foremost. Not because you want to benchmark, you want to be number one. No. What are the things that I must learn from this ranking? What are the things I must also bring? The initiatives that are important, that I'm currently not engaging. So that should also be the next thing that we need to begin to bring on board. And I think with this, the leader, the whole thing lies on the leader. You must provide the effective and strategic oversight in all, not just in some. Don't just hand it over to maybe the one you have appointed as coordinator of your data analytic team or your champions, and you go and sleep, and you even they want to submit without taking a second look. Can you imagine if researchers just write papers and nobody to review the paper, and the publishers of those journals just go ahead and publish the journal and say yes? You can imagine what will come at that, the comment of the people. And so also we must have this peer review mechanism that we need to do. Yes, you can also have people in your office that can also go through the data for you, but also find time to check the data that has been submitted, because some of them may have submitted the data because you have the information, and since you are the approving officer, so you can have the information that this, and also check. And what sometimes some of these my people do is that because they just want to do the work, and they just submit the previous data that has been submitted. And if you submit that kind of data as evidence, you'll be rest assured that you will not score very high, because it's a particular time frame. So I'm sharing with us here some of the experiences we have had, because we have been in the ranking for some time. So a lot of them resubmit those data as evidence. For instance, a workshop that has just been done in 2020. That's when I was going through it again yesterday. Before the closing of the ranking, I was going through. I still saw some of those data, and immediately I removed that, and I asked them, "Oh yeah, this is the data that has to be, the evidence that has to be put here. These are the evidence. We have a current one that matches this specific goal." I think we need to also look at that. Then you need to also have a very strong IT base, because this thing is not just that you plug, because the data must be such that somebody who is ICT inclined can help do that, because the person who is also here may not also be very competent. Yes, he's providing effective leadership there at that level, but he may not be IT savvy. So, and he's not your internet person that who should link it up with your university and all of that university data, your university website. So you must also be sure that you get the right person for that job. And like Banky mentioned, it is not just enough. Like, let's not concentrate on our in-house website. Let's see how we can spread to others media, particularly on the mentioned LinkedIn and any public domain that it has to be within the public. I think that is it. So the leader is the one who should be in charge at all levels.
Really drives, I mean, very, very good insight and oversight over the full process. Thank you so much, Prof. Adebayo. There's a quick question here around what are the other requirements? Which institution or what institution can submit to the SSA rankings, right? By THE. And I know for a fact that it's undergraduate institutions for now for the SSA rankings, right? So if you're an institution that runs undergraduates and undergraduate program, you can submit to the rankings. And there's a very key question.
You have to be in SSA.
And you have to be in SSA, yes. You have
Those
to
are
be.
the two.
You have to be in SSA,
Obvious.
definitely. Dr. Inda from, I believe this Dr. Inda is from Ivory Coast. I may be wrong. Please correct me if I'm wrong. And the question is, how do we bring everyone on board? How do we deal with people who are reluctant to participate or release the data in their possession? As a leader, you're trying to gather, the data, you're trying to get the team going. How do you, are there some tips maybe you can share? Maybe Banky, if you don't mind Dr. Banky sharing one or two, and then Prof can add one or two as well.
Let me say to you, first of all, we have a strategic plan. And we try to align the strategic plan to the ranking. So people can see, first of all, we developed the strategic plan ourselves. We believe in it and we want to execute it. And we are saying that if we're able to do this well, we can always mark ourselves very well. We can do all kinds of things. But imagine if we now place that or juxtapose it within a ranking system, then the externals will tell us the truth. And then we will say to ourselves, gentlemen, ladies, we have a long way to go. So this is a very fair way, and that's one way. We align it with our strategic objectives. The second thing is that we say to ourselves, truly, if people are coming to our universities and they are finishing and they are not getting jobs, then we are not doing what we are supposed to do. Or maybe they are not creating businesses. So it depends. Some of them may want to create businesses. So we set those two, possibilities, those two routes open to them, and then we begin to measure it. Just like I have told you now, by the time a few of our students went on internship and they came back and they started telling us that, oh, we already have a job offer for when we finish. This is 1 year ahead. That for me is great within the context of Nigeria. And perhaps maybe this year there are 10 people. Then we say to ourselves, maybe next year, let's try to achieve 20. And so that way, even your students will take internship a bit more seriously, and so on and so forth. So honestly speaking, it is a lot of convincing, influencing, and showing them that it makes sense to go this way. Then they will release the data. Honestly speaking, and then as leaders, what you can do is also ensure that not a lot of data will reside with individuals. So if you have, and I think Prof was talking about, getting your IT team to do certain things very well. If you know the kind of data that you require, honestly speaking, you can program your data capturing mechanism in such a way that no individual can hold you to ransom. It's very important. Over to you, Prof.
Prof, would you like to add a couple of points to that?
Yes, thank you so much. That was a very wonderful one from Banky here. For us here, what I do is to be sure that the moment any program is executed, a report is submitted. The moment, and we collate monthly reports. And immediately the one that need to go to the public domain, to our website, to news media houses, we share that immediately. And thought that nobody, even if the person decides to leave the institution tomorrow, hey, this one now, he has even left. You can't even find anyone to start asking data. So you don't even have any problem about that. The data is in the public domain. The data is with the Vice-Chancellor. The data is everywhere. And so we try to ensure that no one has a monopoly of the information. Then recalcitrant persons or persons who are not yielding and hiding what, you don't need to even persuade anyone. If somebody is not cooperating, just remove the person and get somebody who will cooperate. That's the truth. That's the truth. Because you would have exhibited that tendency. So there is no, you have maybe the team leader trying to convince the person and go to the attention of the Vice Chancellor. He may just ask you to excuse us because you are not part of this. It will be a spoiler, and by so doing, you may not make any headway. And so the two things here is that if he's not cooperating, let him go. If that is after he has been talked to and persuaded. But if before even persuading such, ensure that the data is available. Immediately any event holds, ask for the report as the team lead or as the Vice Chancellor, as the head of, just request that this data must be submitted, this report must be submitted in the next, after executing such a project. It has to, for instance, our community engagement, we have a website for it. We develop a separate website. Everything goes into there, and I'm also monitoring it. And the chair of that committee will always submit report to the Vice Chancellor on such engagement, because after all, I approved it. And so he's bound to ensure that it is in the public space, and the Vice Chancellor also has a copy. I think by so doing, you don't need to even appeal to anybody to start submitting any data. You already have the data.
That's a good point. Thank you, Prof. Dr. Justa also added that at Management University of Africa, they actually have when they have their weekly HOD meetings, they try to capture the different achievements that are happening in relation to projects. So then that also goes into the capturing, so that it's beyond just one individual, and it's already captured in your documentation, public domain, etc. Thank you so much. I think we have maybe about 10 minutes. I would like us to have maybe just one round of a discussion around challenges. So Prof. Adebayo, Covenant University has been doing this for a while. Dr. Banky, Pan Atlantic University, we just got into this. So maybe you can each share one or two challenges that you've maybe come across or faced, and how you've addressed it. I think we've spoken about a few already, right? The data, the setting up the team, maybe even persons not giving us the information we need, etc. Are there any others that you might like to add in submitting for maybe this SSA that just happened in particular?
Okay, let me start, since we're new to this. There are a few things that obviously, even before you start, you begin to feel, are we going to be able to cross this particular line? So when they say things like first generation, of those, what's the percentage of first generation that are in the university? The fact is that we don't quite capture it when they enter the university. Of course, we can roll back, we can quickly check some things, we can send out a form to be sure of the real evidence. But again, now that we know, this is something that we can begin to do. But if you don't do it 2, 3, 4, 5 months ahead, then that becomes a real problem. Okay. The second one is around, let's say, low-income students receiving financial aid. As a university, yes, we do have a percentage of our income. In fact, 10% of our income is dedicated to that. So, but then I do know of other universities that provides a lot of grants for, students from low income area to be able to attend. So again, how that will situate us within the context of the ranking, we don't know. But the reality is that we are not, in quotes, we are not a public institution. We rely heavily on our fees, and we are definitely maybe not the cheapest you can find in the market. And so the reality is that there are some of those ranking that may put us somehow. However, we take solace in the fact that when you have the likes of Harvard and the rest of them, they are also in the world ranking, and they are doing very well. So fees cannot deter us. It is the value we give, the engagement that the students have, the outcomes, and all of those things that will play a higher role. But they still remain, in quotes, challenges that we have to think about. And then finally, the one on disability, for instance. This is something that on a scale of 1 to 10, we are probably just maybe under the 50% mark. It's something that we have to be very intentional about, at least to move the needle across the 50% mark, and hopefully work our way towards that. So those are the few challenges that we have at this point, yes. And more importantly, understanding fully how those pillars and subcomponents of each pillar, how well to knit them so that you answer the distinct very perfectly.
Yeah. Prof. Adebayo did take note of, mentioned that earlier on in the submission. Yeah, thank you. Prof, how about you? Any challenges to share and how you maybe overcome them?
Yeah, thank you so much, Rose. Well, we have always had challenges, particularly in the early days, and even till now, we are still having some challenges. Maybe the very first one, which usually we have been talking about, is on this data gathering. We had this challenge of not gathering data early enough, but we've been able to overcome that by properly restructuring our methods and mode of data gathering. Next is this one here, particularly on student engagement. This is the first time we faced with this. And I recalled when we were submitting the email details of the student we're going to use. Because what THE does is that they must get response from the students. They won't tell you which one they will use, which one they will not use. Just submit their emails, and they have a particular number that I think about that they use. But until they get minimum of 50 responses, and some of those responses that they get may also not be properly, students, perhaps they have some assignments, they're preparing for exam, and somebody is disturbing them. They feel as if it's a challenge. And so what I did was to ask my team lead here, the one leading our data group here, data analytic group, to do a follow-up on the mail. And of course, we also engaged the students affairs dean, who was also sending messages to them to respond to the messages sent by THE and all of that. Otherwise, because that one can disqualify anyone. Without that alone,
you are not ranked.
You are not going to be ranked. Out of that, you recall 121 institutions submitted their data.
88 were ranked.
Only 88 universities were ranked. So part of this, I want to believe this is a major drawback for those institutions that could not be ranked. Because they must fulfill this condition. Without fulfilling this condition, there's no way the institution will be. So I want to believe that this constituted greatly to so many of those institutions that could not be ranked. And that challenge for us that we face, even though we found a way to equally overcome that, it's which also helped us to, and we're also working on it as an institution, is tracking of our graduates. Yet we have a very powerful alumni office here at Covenant University. Very alumni, they are doing amazingly well. We have graduated over 22,000 graduates, and they are spread across the globe today, over 60, 70 nations of the world. Now, tracking them became a major issue. One of the reasons why I had to send the Deputy Vice-Chancellor, apart from our collaboration, dedicate at the June convening, was for him to understudy and come up with the employability tracking that is being used by Ashesi University. And because it was difficult for us to really track a number of past graduates. And that's the truth, because over the years, since we have not been keeping records, we have some measures of records. We have lost touch with a number of them. And to me, it's critical because apart from ranking, we need them. A lot of them need to, come and connect with the institution. A number of them, after they graduate, that's the end. They lost contact. They lose contact with the institution. Whilst only some of them are partially engaging and all of that. So that's a major challenge that we had. But the way we have been able to overcome them is, all we did was to, we are not there yet, but we are building a database to be able to track all our graduates. And of course, before they graduate, they are members of the alumni, which we have been doing over the years, but it's just being able to track them. So they are inducted into the Alumni Association. And again, the Alumni Office also follow up with them. And maybe I just put it on hold here and so we can move forward.
Thank you so much, Prof. Those are very, very good points. And you're right, that challenge of students responding to the survey is very, very real. And from what I hear you sharing, you submit a list of emails to THE, and they basically, I'm guessing by some form of random sampling, reach out to students to complete the survey, right? And there's a lot of challenges for which students may not complete a survey. So yeah, that's definitely a challenge. Thank you so much for sharing all of this. I think we are almost at the end of our session here. And just before you share your final thoughts, I would just like to add that in the chat box I added, if your institution, if you're on the call, your institution is not yet registered to with Times Higher Education to receive the invitation to participate into 2024 Sub-Saharan Africa rankings, please email SSA ranking@timeshighereducation.com. I put it in the chat box. Or there's a form that they have, you can just complete that form so that you get on the day, because you have to receive an invitation to submit, right? So please do that if you haven't already. The data collection for 2024 will open between January and March 2024 from the information that we have right now. Okay, so can we maybe take a round of final thoughts? Just your final thoughts on this. I don't know, maybe Prof. Adebayo, you might want to start, and then Dr. Banki can also add his final thoughts, and then I will add my final thoughts, and then we can bring this to a close. Thank you.
Yeah, first, I want to appreciate the opportunity given to be part of this edition, this webinar edition, being anchored by the Education Collaborative. But my final word will be this. It is little plus little plus little plus little plus little that makes for greatness. Rome is not built in a day, but Rome has to start in a day. The building of Rome has to start by taking a step. The step we take now ultimately will determine the future of your institution and Africa in general. And why not join this wonderful initiative that is being drawn first to promote the image of Africa? And of course, by extension, your institution would equally be promoted. I'd like again to appreciate everyone. And thank you so much, because together we shall all be there. Thank you, and God bless.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Prof. Dr. Banki.
Okay, let me also join Professor Adebayo in thanking you and Education Collaborative for putting this together. Sometimes when we are being asked to do things that we are not used to doing, there's some kind of reluctance, and hopefully what we have shared today should give us some comfort that together we will make better progress than staying behind. We have talked about African rising in many ways. This is at the heart of African rising. We need to amplify our voices as African. Things that matters to us, we need to talk about it, and the world must listen. But if we don't come together in a very transparent manner and learn from each other and learn the best practices, we will not advance in the ways that we imagine. So I encourage each and every one of us. I'm also taking this leap for the first time as PAU. And we are very confident that it's not about where we fall in the ranking. It is more about the journey which we are going to take, and several years to come. Like Professor Adebayo, we too will say, we've been in this for like 10 years, you know, and we will all be happy that it's not about us alone, but, you know, the rest of our colleagues across the continent can also achieve the same level together. So I encourage you to sign on. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Banki. And yes, you're right. It always takes us the first step, right? So we're definitely acknowledging that, yes, it doesn't mean that the very first time you put in your submission, you're going to be ranked at the very top or in the middle or the bottom. What we are saying or encouraging is that institutions, higher education institutions, undergraduate in Sub-Saharan Africa who qualify should submit for these rankings. Please reach out to the Education Collaborative at education.collaborative@ashesi.edu.gh. I put in the chat box. If you have any further questions, inquiries, or maybe you want to be connected across the network, right, to some of the institutions that submitted in this first round that, you know, got ranked or did not get ranked, because you want to learn about their experiences, you want to learn about how they went about it, and maybe collaborate and learn as you prepare to submit for the first round, for the opening in January. Do reach out, and we are very happy to connect you and, you know, within the network. Thank you once again. We've shared quite a few, insights here. Identify champions. The leadership must be involved in setting this up. Definitely, as a leader of your institution, you need to know the team that's handling this. You need to ensure that you have deep oversight over it, checking the data, putting forth your best foot, good data, true picture of what's happening in your institution, gathering the evidence, identifying the areas that are gaps for subsequent submissions. Maybe not this year, but subsequent submissions as well. We also spoke about starting early. So now that you have the link to the Times Higher Education web page, where it's talking about, where it's given a good description of the different indicators. you can get started noting, where your evidence is, noting the examples, noting where you have, you've put out this data in the public domain, etc. Get started putting together your team on this. Thank you so much, everyone. Really, really appreciate your time. Professor Adebayo, taking time from your office today to join us. Really appreciate your time. And Covenant University. Thank you so much, Dr. Banki, taking time from your work and from your travels from Pan Atlantic University to join us. Really appreciate it. And I wish everyone a very good afternoon and evening wherever you are on the African continent. And we hope to connect again soon.
Yeah, bye.
Thank you. Have a nice one, everyone. Bye.
Bye.